and welcome back to Driving Connections. I'm your host, Subi Ghosh, Executive Vice President at Dealer Authority. And today I wanted to answer some questions that I received from you guys. So thank you so much for sending those in. One of the themes that I saw that people wanted me to cover was, running new teams, new internet departments or marketing departments. When I first started speaking up in automotive, I was just trying to share things from my insights and experiences from running these teams, and I found that it was therapeutic for me because I was finding peers that would give me feedback, give me interesting insights of their own, and so I'm hoping to stimulate some conversation and connections this way by answering your questions and maybe getting you guys to talk about it as well. So if any of you are new, up-and-coming, or experienced internet directors, e-commerce directors, marketing managers, anything within that scope, I hope you watch and get some points out of it. But I also hope that you contact me so that we can maybe pair you up with people that are in similar roles. I know that was my saving grace when I was running these teams, because oftentimes you function in a little bubble by yourself. Your closest friends are sometimes your vendors, because they're the only people that really understand what you're doing or working on and can discuss those things with you in a way that stimulates your mind or challenges you, and it's a great thing. I mean, I volunteer myself if anyone wants to do that, to spar, to ask questions and all that. But having peers that go through it at the same time also helps immensely. Some of my closest friends today are people that we started, our careers together. Ryan Dunkel, Mike Watson, kind of helped me through so many of my moments. And Ryan's going to be joining me for an episode coming up to talk about a new venture of his within his dealership, which also got me thinking about this. So today we're going to be talking about the roles of starting a new department or maybe taking over a new department. So starting with a new department, right? You've been doing great with internet stuff and you seem to get it. So why don't you just figure out the internet stuff and do it for us? I think a lot of us can relate to that, right? You're kind of good at it, so figure out stuff that's completely unrelated. And oh, by the way, you can also fix our computers and printers and anything related to the internet in any way, shape, or form. And so in an effort to go figure this internet stuff out, I learned some things, so hopefully I can share some of that with you today. The first thing that I would say is don't try to do it all at once. We tend to get excited and learn about all the things in digital marketing, and honestly, in just relating digital marketing to automotive, there's about 50 things to learn and to understand and to start projects for your dealership. So we start all these projects, right? And we tend to want to and are encouraged to become a jack of all trades. And there is a difference between being a jack of all trades and a jack of all trades, master of none. So what I would encourage you to do is to not just learn everything at surface value or a little bit above surface. I would encourage you to learn as much as you can about all the things that are directly related to your role, your passion, or your department, but also learn a couple of those things that are greatest focuses for your department, and learn those things really, really, really well. Whether that be something as broad as SEO or reputation or customer relations or pay-per-click, or something as focused as learning your CRM better than the customer service reps at the CRM company. I've done that, and I've had CRM companies come to me and ask me what my thoughts were on it, or fly me out to their location to discuss what my concerns were and maybe take those things and start to better, their departments and so forth. I think it's an incredible value, because when you don't rely on someone else for that information, you can't get the wool pulled over your eyes. You can't take those excuses and just accept them as the result. You can instead challenge and push. And even I had a ADP CRM, which was one of the most outdated ones at the time, but I preferred it to all the others because I knew how to maneuver that thing better than anything. So in learning it, I figured out solutions that the customer service people couldn't give me. I figured out methods around my problems, and started fixing things for my dealership that they couldn't provide me. And so I would encourage you to do that. If it's SEO or social media or pay-per-click, learn as much about it so that you can be a valuable partner. You don't have to do it yourself. Maybe you can. Maybe you have the time and your role allows you to do it yourself, which is great. Or you can find a partner and really push them. I have some clients today that are dream clients because they learn it. They're constantly keeping up with the latest and greatest, and they're challenging me and are willing to be challenged to try really cool and creative and innovative things for their dealerships. So I would encourage you to learn one or two things really, really well, and learn all the other things as well that relate to your job. But being a jack of all trades, master of none will really only hurt you, especially after the role that you're in is done. I am the perfect example of Murphy's Law when it comes to dealership roles. Things just kept happening that ended my relationships with these dealerships. And it was out of a lot of people's control. It was it didn't matter that I did a great job. It was just changes in management or, other things that ended those roles for me. But what I learned from that is if I become strong in an area, I'm setting myself up to make sure that I either hold that job or be able to get another job after that. Your life doesn't end, and you don't have to take a back seat or a step backwards if you really know something really well. I think the struggle with a lot of people that kind of bounce around in this space and struggle finding another place after one opportunity is over is because they don't have a niche, or they don't have something that they know really, really well that's a selling point to themselves. So I would say to do that. And then also, we carry as much responsibility as anyone's willing to give us, and that can be a really bad thing. So what I would encourage you to do is plans. Organize yourself. When I take on a new department or a new responsibility at my current place, or a new department at a new place, setting expectations is very, very important, not only from your management to you, but from you to your management. So what I would do is I would write out the things that were important to them, and then I would write out the things that were important for me to accomplish for them, and say, hey, okay, these are all of the goals that we need to accomplish. Let's prioritize them together. Because if I tell you that I can accomplish all of this, I'm lying to you and to myself, and we're not going to be able to truly dominate in any one area. So if you start to organize yourself in those priorities, and then also identify how much time a certain project is going to take, yes, it becomes a little on that corporate side of projects and timing and all that, but it really does make a difference. Because my management teams always knew, okay, well, here are the things she's working on. In order for us to add on something, we're going to have to sacrifice something, or we can do it when this project is complete, or maybe reprioritize our list. One of the major issues I think that happen with internet, e-commerce, marketing directors as a whole is that because our management doesn't understand what we do, we're pushed to deliver in terms that they understand, and maybe that doesn't make sense to what we're working on. And the only way to really overcome that obstacle is to challenge them and to educate them as to how much time these things take. Every manager I've ever known pushes their teams to unrealistic expectations and deadlines because that is their job. Their job is to push you to do better than you think you're capable of doing. So if you put these things in place, you still have to push yourself to exceed those expectations, but at least you're both on the same page, understanding how long and what it entails, and maybe the assistance you need to be able to accomplish that stuff. And then the other thing that I would say is to delegate. We end up being so overwhelmed by things that we focus on the things that make us feel like we can do it easily without getting any pushback. Delegate the little things. Don't hoard your responsibilities. Hoarding your responsibilities doesn't make you more valuable. If you're going to build a team, find little mini-me versions of yourself. I tell this to every manager that I've ever managed myself. If you can't make small versions of yourself to accomplish the things that you think are accolades, are achievements of yours, like I can get the most number of reviews, or I can do this in X amount of time, there are going to be things that you can't find a replacement to do that you're going to have to do yourself. But if you don't let go a little bit and hold those people accountable, you're not being an effective manager, and you're not really allowing yourself to grow. One of the things that I think a lot of managers kind of side table is the advancement of your department. If you're so busy putting out all these fires daily and you're not forcing yourself to identify the latest and greatest techniques and ideas and important new evolutions or tactics or strategies, then you and your department are going to be behind, and you're not going to be innovative, and you're not going to be able to outthink or outsmart or outpace your competition. So make time for that. Dedicate an hour a week to finding out what's going on out there in automotive and outside of automotive. Which brings me to my next point. If you're going to learn about any digital marketing concept, you have to learn it outside of automotive also. One of the things that we talk about a lot right now is omni-channel marketing. Only, I think, 2 or 3 people in automotive is embracing or talking about it. And unfortunately, outside of automotive, it's a huge chunk of people talking about it. If you don't know what it is, go look it up. And if you need someone to talk to about it, call me, call Jeff Glacken, Tyson Maliger. We'll all happily talk about it, because whether you do business with us or not, this is the way that automotive needs to be today for our consumers, because then we're not really taking steps forward. But I digress. Foundations are really, really important when building a new team, a new department, or taking one over. You have to spend at least a week, I would suggest 2, digesting the information that is there. If you don't build a foundation for yourself and a baseline of your own data, you can't come in with national numbers, statistics, what other people are doing on the polar other coast of you. None of those numbers matter if you can't look at what your store is doing and how you're performing overall. I've walked into a dealership and they pretty much in the first week asked me, well, what kind of closing percentages do you want us to be at? And I said, well, this is the standard, and this is where my last team was, and this is where I would like to be. And they were like, well, we're kind of already there, so what next? And I learned a lesson that day that hopefully you don't learn in public in front of your teams. Hopefully you learn it today and don't make the mistake that I did. But find out what your baselines are. Understand as far back as you can go what your website traffic is, what your unique visitors look like month after month, what the dips and valleys of the traffic are for your specific website. Look at what your time on site is. Look at your conversion, and then look at your leads. How many leads are you getting? Are you deduping them? How many of them are true leads that aren't service or duplicate comments from a week ago the person put in a lead? But whatever it is, however you evaluate a true lead or a true visit or whatever, make sure that that's the formula you use going forward. And if you change that, go backwards and write those numbers again so that you are fairly assessing your store and your numbers. Now, when it comes to those baselines, all of those numbers that you need, make sure you have any manager in marketing or in automotive, period. If you're managing people, you need to know your numbers, what your salespeople are doing, what your store is doing, your showroom, your website, all of that you need to have at the palm of your hands. You need to be able to look it up and to know. If you don't have those baselines, you can't look for trends. You can't say that even though March is a great month for the rest of the country, we, for whatever reason, for 3 years, have had a dip in traffic to our showroom and to our website. So we need to do something in preparation, and by preparation I mean before March hits, not March 5th trying to figure out what to do for March. But in preparation, you can then see, okay, for March we have to put in extra efforts in these different places to be able to manage and to be able to stimulate that growth that we need for that month. The other thing that I would say is, if you are the person responsible for looking at your leads coming in and delegating them out or looking at the numbers, or if you have someone that can do this for you because it's tedious work, I worked with a gentleman named Doug Miller, and he was one of the greatest data minds that I've ever met. And what I loved about the way that he would monitor my numbers for me is that by the 10th of the month, we could see that our numbers weren't looking the way that they had been for the last few months. So we had to make sure that we were doing something to remedy that problem before it was really a problem. If you feel like in the last 5 days of the month you're rushing to hit goals that don't seem attainable, it's because you haven't been proactive enough to identify these problems before it's the end of the month and you're just trying to get 50 new units sold. Maybe there's something happening. Maybe one of your third-party leads isn't performing the way that it is. Maybe your website isn't converting your leads properly. Whatever it is, if you're actively looking at these foundational numbers and you have something to compare it to, you can stimulate sales for today because of what you know. Too many people rely on their vendors and rely on, automated processes that end up hurting you, and you only catch something well after you get results in, whether it be sales for the end of the month or traffic that you're reviewing for, February and March. That doesn't help me. That doesn't help you fix and to drive sales for that month. You can drive sales for that month, but only if you know what's happening as it's happening. So don't digest your numbers on the 5th of this month for last month. Digest it as it's happening so you can proactively start fixing problems. I could talk about that for years. And if you need help to understand how to do that, let me know. I have a few reports that I created over time that helped me track all of that. It is time. It is a dedication of time. I would usually do it in the first 30 minutes of my routine when I walked into the office. It was data, and then it was answering emails. Mainly because if I don't understand my numbers, I can't be effective. I think we think in these big long-term plans that we forget sometimes to look at the daily and the weekly of what we can affect today and tomorrow. So slow down. Speaking of slowing down, when we digest information from the forums, from automotive conversations and websites and playbooks and blogs and conferences, we're talking to and reading information from like-minded individuals that are really excited about digital marketing, and they have so much to say, much like this right here. I'm including myself in this. We get all of these ideas, and even when you're going to a conference, I say the same thing. Write down all the ideas you want to accomplish, pick the top 3, and make a plan for yourself of how you're going to achieve each thing, and then put the rest of it away until you start feeling a little bit of a momentum, and then bust out that list again. Our brains catch fire at these events or these moments where we're getting all this information and we're reading the forums and the blogs and the communities on Facebook, that we want to take that back and we want to go into our store and we want to, I think I talked to Jennifer Briggs about this. We want to talk to all these people at our store that, one, don't understand it, aren't going to have that same fire that we do, or we want to do 1,000 projects the moment we get in. And what happens if you start 1,000 projects at the same time? You're only going to complete 1 or 2 or maybe none at all. So make sure you pace yourself, take a breather. If you find an idea that you like, write it down, but then also research it. There's 1,000 voices in this industry about any given topic you want to learn about. So understand or do some research to hear from multiple voices, and then put those things into play and create those plans for yourself. Anyone in management needs to be organized, needs to have plans, and I'm going to say that over and over again. Those are the 2 of the most important factors, because in a world where our plate can no longer be seen because it's so full, where we're constantly getting new ideas as every manager or every upper management officer or owner goes to a new 20 group meeting or reads a new magazine piece, they immediately throw that in your desk and say, do that. It's working for somebody. Do it. And if you don't plan those things out, if you don't organize yourself, so if you don't have those priorities and that line of communication where you can really prove to someone why this works or this doesn't work or how long this is going to take and what you need to take off your list to achieve it, it can be overwhelming and can actually contribute to your demise if you just get so overwhelmed that you're not really being effective anymore. Okay, so we talked about a lot of things. As I start to wrap up a little bit, I want to talk about when you walk into a new location, buy-in is exceptionally important. Whether you're starting a new department at your same place or a new place, make sure you convince them that you know things, not because you walk in and say, I achieved X at dealership Y, and so you need to buy into me and just follow what I have to say. Make sure you really break that down into what makes sense to them, into believing in you because of what you're willing to do for them too. One of the things that I used to do, every salesperson that I ever worked with felt like they were logging everything that was worthwhile, and the ones that weren't worthwhile weren't going to be put into the CRM. So I sat in the showroom and I tabulated every person that walked in with, characterizations of the people, lady in hat, man in pink shirt, or whatever. And then I would go back to the salesperson and say, why did this person get put in? Why didn't this person get put in a very friendly approach. I want to convince you that this is worth it. So I'm not calling you out. I'm not going to go tell your manager. This is just, let's have a conversation. And over time, they would give me their excuses. And then I would say, okay, fine. How about I work that lead then and convince you that you should have put it in because it was worth it. And then you get the sale. I'm not going to take anything for it. And me doing that a couple of times and getting the sale for them really got them to buy in, and they would get other people to buy in because you're investing the time in them. We often walk in and say, I know this because I read it. I know this because I've done it at a different place. I know what I'm talking about because people in the online communities seem to tell me that I know what I'm talking about. We walk in with all these notions of why aren't they believing me, and don't often enough try to convince them that we're on their team. And salespeople, 100% of what they make comes from them making that sale. So that's what they're focused on. And if you can't get to their level of understanding what motivates them and what they need to be able to do their job better, it really doesn't matter how much traffic you bring to the website. It really doesn't matter what you do. You've got to make whomever you're trying to get bought in understand what you're doing. So my last point that I really want to hit before we wrap up is mutual goals. Nothing has helped me more to get buy-in from sales managers or salespeople or the F&I team or whatever department that you're working against or working in side by side but not necessarily working together with yet. Come up with mutual goals. Whatever it is that they need to accomplish that you also need to accomplish, come up with something. because then you have something to talk about, you have something to vent about, you have something to do research and share with each other, and you have a goal that you're trying to hit together that will help you become more teammates and less opposing departments. And then I'm just going to really quickly talk about a couple of things. Don't ever think that you're the smartest person in the room, because there's always somebody quietly listening that knows a lot more than you. Always be willing to learn. Invest that time into learning. Surround yourself with people that really know what they're talking about, that can provide insight. Don't ever walk into a department and bring in your friends from your vendor friends from previous relationships at other dealerships and just plug and play. You would get upset if a new GM walked in and brought in their friends and replaced you, or replaced processes and things that you were really familiar with. Do your research, get your team's buy-in, and then sign up if some of those relationships are going to work. We oftentimes value those vendor relationships and those friend relationships high, and I am someone that is sitting on the vendor side now, so I know I'm kind of shooting myself in the foot a little bit, but I genuinely believe that those relationships sometimes can prohibit you from really challenging and pushing your strategy. Maybe they're stuck somewhere that you want to go. You're surpassing that point. Some of those relationships are willing to listen and evolve with you, and some of them will be the perfect relationship and are willing to do all those things, but aren't the perfect fit for that location and that team and that structure. So be very, very cognizant of what the needs of that location are, and then maybe eventually you can bring in those people that you trust. It's very important to leverage those networks and those relationships that you trust to be able to move the needle in any of those platforms, CRM, website company, marketing, whatever. But be very, very cognizant and aware. And then also, don't compare yourself to people that you meet online or at conferences. Don't compare their situation to you. You can get really depressed easily. Not everyone has the same management. Not everyone has the same support. It's good to look at it and draw inspiration from it. But don't go back defeated. Don't go back saying, this should be happening in my store. As someone that had the odds against them at their first dealership, you can convince people if you're willing to fight for it, if you're willing to step up and take those challenges head on. But if you have the mentality that you are owed the respect and the buy-in, I think you're setting yourself back a little bit. So take those challenges on. I'm not saying that you're going to 100% of the time be able to convince people of things that they're not, but there's always, maybe you can't win over management, but maybe you can win over the front lines. Maybe you can't win over the front lines, but you can win management over to invest in the things or the people, or to try new things. So just be open-minded, be willing to try and to push yourself well past the point of what you think you can achieve. If you have the mindset that it is a privilege, not a right, you will earn it. And respect begets respect. Don't walk in with authority because you're given that fancy title. Make sure you respect the people around you. I know some of this seems basic, but you'd be surprised at how many people know it and walk in and do that anyway. And I will admit that I walked in thinking that I could achieve because I have achieved. And the reality is every single dealership is unique, not because of its location and consumers and demographics. It's because the management styles that have been used there are going to be unique based on their evolution, their people. Every dealership is a little snowflake of its own, and you've got to identify how you can fit in and how you can help them move their goals until they becomes a we and you become their same team. Just because you walk in saying we doesn't mean you're part of that team yet. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next week.